It is easy to forget how vulnerable we really are when we are inside our cars. We treat the steel and glass like a fortress, a bubble that separates us from the world outside. We lock the doors, turn up the heat, and assume we are safe. But for those abusers eye for a living delivering food, groceries, or packages, the bubble is fragile. We are summoned by strangers to locations we have never been to, often in the dead of night, trusting that the person on the end of the app just wants a burger or pizza. But sometimes they want something else entirely. Welcome back to Grim Reality Logs. I am the mysterious Nomad, and I have compiled a collection of terrifying correspondence of drivers who accepted the wrong order. Tasse are the nights where the PPS leads to a dead end, where the park's lights are shattered, and where the customer is waiting back for food. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Realty Locks. It helps the channel more than you know. Now, let's dive into the darkness. I have been working as a contract delivery driver for about 6 months. It is not glamorous work, but it pays the bills, or at least usually does. I live in the Pacific Northwest, near the border of Oregon and Washington, where the weather is gray for 9 months out of the year, and the forests are so dense they swallow the light before the sun even sets. It was a Tuesday night in late October. The rain had been relentless all week, turning the dirt roads 80 sludge and making the highway slick with oil and water. I had been alive since 5 p.m. and it was now pushing 11:30 p.m. It had been a slow night. Most of the orders were for small fast food items with total tips barely covering the cost of gas. I was sitting in the parking lot of a trend of or burger giant, debating whether it was tall till I should decide. My lower back was itching, and the rhythm of the windshield wipers was starting to hypnotize me into sleepiness. I reached for the ignition to turn the car off when my phone chirped. It was that loud, demanding, ping the signals and new offer. I glanced at the screen, expecting under $4 appealing for a 6-mile drive. Instead, my eyes widened. The offer was for $50. I stared at it for a second, thinking it was a glitch. Base pay was standard, but the tip was massive. $50 flat. The restaurant was a high-end steakhouse downtown that was built to close in 20 minutes, and the drop-off location was far. I zoomed in on the map. The destination pinned away off the main drive. It was north, past the suburbs, past the new developments, deep in the foothills where the logging roads cut through the timberland. A meal that area vacuously. It was mostly private old service race, and wealthy people who wanted to live off the glinted to the Vitesse numbers. $58 for a 4 to 5 minute round trip. In my head, I did the math. That would buy over my goal for the night. Could pay the internet bill and fill up my tank. The regional part of my brain told me it was too late to be driving out into the sticks in this weather. The rain was coming down hard now, hammering against the roof like a handful of gravel. But the desperate part of my brain, the part that dreaded checking my bank account balance, what now? I tapped except the drive to the restaurant was uneventful. I picked up the bag, which was surprisingly light. Just one sneaker, medium rare, with a side of mashed potatoes and a bottle of sparkling water. The staff looked tired and ready to leave. The hostess handed me the bag and gave me a sympathetic look. Drive safe, she said. It is nasty out there. I nodded, thanking her, and ran back to my car, shielding the paper back from the dumper. I set the food in the passenger seat, buckled it in, have it after our break green, a milkshake and sand started the navigation. The road took me onto the interstate for about 10 miles, then onto the state highway, the widest way toward the mountains. The further I drove, the fewer streetlights I saw. The ambient glow of the city fit in my rearview mirror, replaced by an oppressive, heavy darkness. The only light came from my head beams cutting through the sheets of rain. By the time I turned off the state highway onto the local access road, it was midnight. This road was pea, but that filled vacant IT had potholes that jarred my spine every few hundred years. The trees were ants and giants, towering over the road and creating the tumble effect. It felt like driving into the throat of a beast. My DPE's voice cut through the silence into miles. Turn left onto a fire road 9. I frowned. Fire roads were usually gravel. I hoped my sedan could handle it. The mud would be deep tiny. I turned the radio down, needing to focus. The static was getting bad anyway. The signal was dying. The deeper I went through the valley, I made the left turn. The pavement ended immediately, replaced by a washboard gravel track. The car bounced and rattled, the suspension groaning in protest. I checked on my phone. I had a bar of service. The estimated arable time was still 12 minutes away. Why was someone order a single stick dinner out here 8 midnight? Maybe it was a security guard at a logging site. Maybe an eccentric millionaire. I tried to reassure myself, but the isolation was starting to get to me. There were no other cars, no houses, just the rain, the mud, and the dark wall of trees pressing in on both sides. Suddenly, the music on my radio cut out completely with a sharp pop, leaving only the sound of the tires crunching on gravel. I reached out to turn it off, but before I touched the zone, the GPS screen on my phone flickered. The blue arrow direction of my car started spinning in circles as if it had lost track of which way was marked. Recalculating, the robotic voice said. Recalculating. I slowed down. The road had split into a E shape. To the left, the road looked slightly more maintained. To the right, it was overgrown with tall grass, looking like it had been driven on a year. Proceed to the route, the voice said, but it didn't say which way. I looked at the map on the screen. The blue line was glitching, snapping back and forth between the two paths. I rolled down my window to see if I could spot a chance in a marker. The cold, wet air rushed in, smelling of pine needles and something else fumbling a faint and metallic, like rusted iron. There was no sign. I decided to take the left path. It looked safer. As he accelerated slightly, my headlights caught something reflective on a tree trumble 50 yards down the rifle-rated slide. I squinted. I'd look like an old fade as I knelt into the bark. You couldn't read the words, but there was a symbol painted in red spray paint over it. An arrow pointing further down into the darkness of the overground path. My phone pings. A message from the customer. I froze. I barely had service. How did a message get through? I looked at the text. It was 3 words. You to see run. My heart hammered against my ribs. I slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly in the mud. I looked back at the fork in the road. I had taken the left pass. The text implied I should have taken the right one. Or maybe it implied I shouldn't have come at all. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely grip the steering wheel. I stared at the phone screen, waiting for another message, waiting for the sender to explain what. But the screen stayed dark. The rain continued to hammer against the roof, drowning out the sound of my own heavy breathing. Lungi tried to claw its way back in. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it chose wrong referred to the road conditions. Maybe the customer knew the left road was washed out further up. I swallowed the lump in my throat and shifted the car into reverse. The tires spun in the slick mud for a terrifying second before catching traction, pulling me back to the fork in the road. I turned to the wheel and pointed the nose of my sedan down the rectangle path, the one with the overgrown grass and the cryptic script in it, Earl. As soon as I entered the tree line, I knew I had made a mistake. The branches here were low and untrimmed. They scraped against the sides of my car with a sound like long, right fingernails dragging across a child bar. I winced with every screech, imagining the scratches on the paint, but I couldn't stop. The road was too narrow to turn around. I was committed. Wildly as I navigated over deep ruts filled with water. My headlights buzzed wildly, illuminating brief flashes of the forest of twisted trunk. A wall of ferns ice reflecting in the dark that vanishes from his moon as a midday. Probably deer. Just deer. I drove for another 10 minutes at a crawling pace. The GPS has stopped recalculating and now showed a straight line to a dead and bound a quarter in Boa E. The arrival time tacked it down. 3 minutes. 2 minutes. Oh, minutes. And the trees suddenly broke. I rolled into a small, circular clearing. My headlights washed over a scene that made my stomach drop. Here was no house. Twigged Terry was no cabin. Here was just arrested. Hibidity chain link fence stop it. Vacant I they had razor wife that looked decayed as old. And the center of the fence was a large metal gate, secured with a thick padlock. And next to the gate stood a small, concrete guard sack, no bigger than a toll booth. The windows of the shack were dark. The concrete was stained because IT had moss and black streaks of greater damage. It looked like the entrance to an old quarry or a mine that had been shut down in the 80s. The GPS voice chirped loud and cheerful in the silence. You have arrived. I sat there, engine idling, staring at the desolate gate. This can be right. Well, would a $50 stick to an abandoned security checkpoint in the middle of a forest? I grabbed my phone to call the customer. No service. 0 bars. 10. The upper freshets. A new note appeared in the delivery instructions. Get his jam. Leave folding the guard checked. Cash dippers on the counter. I read it twice. They wanted me to get out. I looked at the shack again. It was a puff their feet away from my car. The rain was coming down in shits now. I cut Lee's the food by the gate, take a picture, and leave. But the note mentioned a cash dippe, and I had driven all this way. The $50 in the app was good, but if there was inner 20 or 50 whiting in there. Read is a powerful anesthetic for fear. I unbuckled my Siebel. I grabbed the paperback with the stick dinner, which is now lukewarm. I grabbed my heavy flashlight from the glove box. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stepped out into the stern. The cold hit me instantly. Wind howled throughout the tops of the fir trees, sounding like a distant scream. I slammed the car door shut, the sound echoing flatly in the clearing. I clicked on my flashlight and walked toward the shack, my boot squelching in the mud. As I caught closer, the metallic smell I had noticed earlier returned. It was stronger now. I've smelled like wet bananas and raw meat. I tried to ignore it, focusing on the beam of my light dancing on the wet concrete of the shack. I reached at the door of the structure area. It was metal, slightly aged. I pushed it open with the two of my bullet. It creaked, a habitual process of rusted hinges. Hello. I called out. Delivery. No answer. It's the sound of the rain. I shone the light inside. The sack was empty of furniture except for a built-in metal counter running over the back wall. The floor was covered in old leaves, trash, and something elsey. In the corner, there was a pile of dark, white racks. I stepped inside out of the rain. The smell was overpowering in the enclosed space. I set the food back in the counter. There was no cash tip. I moved the light across the counter. Nothing. I felt a surge of anger. I had driven all this way, scratched my car, and walked through a storm for a prank. Then, I saw it. Sitting on the far edge of the counter, half hidden by a discarded soda can, was a smartphone. It was propped up, facing the door. Facing me. The screen was dark. I frowned and reached out to touch it. Maybe the customer had left it. Maybe the instructions were on this phone. Before my fingers could brush the screen, the phone buzzed. It lit up. It wasn't a text message. It was an incoming call. The name on the color easy made my blood freeze in my veins. It said the driver. My phone in my pocket began to ring at the exact same time. I stared at the phone on the counter, pen down in the pocket of my rain jacket where my phone was vibrating against my chest. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The phone on the counter was the customer's phone. They had called me. And now, they were calling me again. What if the phone was here? Where were they? I didn't even swear. I backed away slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack them. Now I can't pay my flashlight trained on the counter, half expecting a hand to snake out from the shadows. That was when I heard the sound. It was subtle at first, masked by the rain. The snake of a dry twig, then the squelch of a boot pulling out of deep mud. It came from outside, behind the shack. I spun around, aiming my flashlight through the dirty glass of the shack's window. A beam of light hit me in the face. Someone was standing in the tree line, not 20 feet away, shining a hyper flashlight directly at me. Then, a second light clicked onto the left, and a third, to the right. Till the three of them. They were moving. They were just standing there, pinning me in the shack with their beams. They were silent. Town, but the Wolfgang security guards. They were polished. They were dressed in dark, heavy ranger, the face obscured my hoods and the glare of the lights. Panic, primal and electric, seized me. This is a robbery. A robber would have rushed me. A robber would have yelled, "Give me the keys." This was a trap. They had lured me here. They had waited until I was out of the car, trapped in this concrete box. I did thing. I wrapped it. I threw the bag of food at the window, shattering the glass in the surprise. In the split second of confusion, they bolted out the door. Get him. A voice read. It was a deep, guttural sound, disturbed by the wine. I sprinted toward my car. The muffled light quicksand grabbing at my ankles, trying to drag me down. I could hear heavy footsteps splashing behind me, closing the distance. I didn't look back. I fumbled for my keys, my fingers slippery with rain and terror. I reached the car door and ripped it open. As I threw myself into the driver's seat, a hand slammed against the rear window. I screamed, jamming the key into the ignition. The engine sputtered. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I beckoned, twisting the key again. The engine read to life just as the driver's side window shattered. A glove of fist punch through the glass, showering me in septic cubes. I felt fingers clawing at the shoulder of my jacket. I didn't sift and dry. I shifted reverse and stomped on the gas pedal. The car shot backward. The tire spun on the gravel, spraying mud and rocks. The man clinging to my door was ripped away by the momentum, disappearing into the dark wet slurry of the crown. I was driving blind. I could see the winding path behind me. I was relying on the reverse camera on my dashboard, which was grainy and covered in raindrops. I swerved wildly, the rear of the car smashing into bushes and scraping against tree trunk. I saw the flashlight beams bobbing in the distance, getting smaller, but they were running after me. They were chasing the car on foot. That terrified me more than anything. It means they knew the terrain. It meant they thought they could catch me. I slammed the car into drive as soon as the pass right in, now slightly, risking a transmission failure. The wheels locked, then spun, and the car lurched forward. I didn't care about the branches and board. I didn't care about the suspension. He floored it. I drove like a maniac back down that overground tunnel. I drifted around the corners, bouncing off the ruts, my head hitting the roof of the car. The cold wind rushed at it through the broken window, bringing the rain and the noise of the storm right into the cabin. When they finally burst out onto the main gravel road, When I should have taken if it hadn't been corrected didn't stop. I didn't slow down until I hit the paved state highway 5 miles later. I drove straight to the police station in the next town over. I was shaking so badly can't even write my statement. The officer had to type it for me while I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, drinking lukewarm coffee. They sent a vigil girl to the coordinates I gave him. They found the shack. They found the smashed window and the tire tracks, but the gate was open. The phone I had seen on the counter was gone. And the food. The bag I had thrown. The officer told me they found the paper bag. It had been torn open, but the steak wasn't there. It looked like it hadn't been eaten, but not by animals. Here were no bite marks on the bone. They had been picked clean. I quit driving that night. I don't go out past sunset anymore. And every time my phone buzzes from an unknown number, I feel the same cauldron wash over me. I wonder if they are still out there still outing in the dark, hungry for something more than delivery. That is the price we pay for convenience. We invite strangers to our steps to bring us food, and we drive to the doorsteps of strangers to make a living. We trust the app. We trust the little blue line on the map. But the app does not know what is waiting in the trees. It does not know the road leads to a cage, or that the person on the other end isn't hungry for a stick, but fine of the hell. I still think about that phone sitting on the counter. The way it lit up. The way the name the driver flashed on the screen. It means they had me saved in their contacts. They had been watching me, tracking me, waiting for me to accept the offer. It wasn't random. It was a selection. So the next time you are delayed in food, or the next time you see a delivery driver pulling up to your house in the rain, remember the story. Turn on your porch light. Don't make them walk into the darks. And if you are a driver and the Gampia starts to spin and the road starts to narrow, just turn around. No tip is worth your life. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Reality Locks. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.